She never heard back from him until he was under investigation. And he called her, I believe, in 2000. It could have been 2007 or 2008. And she was very surprised because he didn't have her number. How would he know where to find her? Her phone suddenly rings and it's Jeffrey Epstein. And basically he's saying to her, are you getting phone calls? If anybody calls and wants to know information about me, just, he gave her instructions and she's thinking, I don't know what's going on. And before you know it, she has communicated now with the FBI, with the Palm Beach Police Department, and she has joined and is giving information. And what motivated her was she had by this time become a mother, and she gave birth to a beautiful little girl. And she thought to herself, if I don't jump in there and help them catch Epstein and stop him, this might happen to my little girl. I have to do this for her. And she has been the crusading factor, don't you think? I mean, the one who she's named names. She's done this at great risk to herself. I mean, who goes up against the prince, the son of the Queen of the United Kingdom? Who does that? One woman, Virginia Giuffre.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. Before we get started, I just have a few short messages. First off, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this podcast. It's the best way to help us grow and help me get on bigger and better guests. Also, don't forget you can pre-order my book, To the Moon, The GameStop Saga, right now by following the links in the description below. We've also got a few quick sponsors for the show today. With Christmas coming up, we all need some inspiration for presents. And it can be a really tough question, especially for the women in your lives. That's wives, girlfriends, mums, and sisters. Well, I might just have the answer for you. Unidragon wooden puzzles solve this problem. It might just be the coolest puzzle that you'll ever do. Unidragon puzzles are stunning pieces of artwork with vivid and vibrant colors. They do a range of wolves, tigers, and owls that look like cutouts from mosaics and stained glass windows, as well as traditional portraits of Chiang Mai, the Sagrada Familia, and the New York sunrise. These aren't just beautiful pieces of artwork in themselves. Each piece of the puzzle is shaped like a whole host of animals. That's butterflies, lizards, whales, and more. So you could theoretically have a lion's head made up of everything it would eat for breakfast. The best part is that listeners of Chatter will get a 10% discount by using the code CHATTER. That's CHATTER. There are different packs for children and adults, and each puzzle is packed with a premium wooden gift box. New puzzles are released every month, so keep an eye on the website for new designs coming out all the time. Get a fun puzzle, a colourful and unique piece of artwork, and a great present all in one. Go to unidragon.com or .eu or follow the link in the description below. And don't forget to use your discount code CHATTER for 10% off your puzzle. That's Unidragon. Puzzling artwork and a truly unique gift. Your internet browsing data is on show for governments, ISPs, or bad actors to see when you fail to use a VPN to protect yourself. So why not try ExpressVPN, the internet's #1 VPN? You can protect your browsing data from your internet provider and prying eyes by going to ExpressVPN today and getting 35% off 12 months of ExpressVPN. Use it for privacy, safety, or just to watch Netflix shows from another part of the world. You'll be stunned at the amount of extra content you can access just by setting your location to somewhere new. Links for everything will be in the description below, so check them out and then please enjoy the podcast. Okay, so everything is started. I believe we're good. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chatter. Today I am here with Kirby Sommers. She's back for round number 2 to talk all about the Prince Andrew Virginia Giuffre case. Kirby, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you for having me again. I didn't realize it so many months had gone by because these things are happening so quickly. So I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, well, I guess the way the world's going at the minute, it's one of those things that it both seems like time doesn't move, but it also moves like super rapidly. It's this weird, like.
I agree. We're in a time warp that we've never encountered before. I mean, look at all the books I write, and then I get up and it's like, oh, 6 months have gone by. Okay. But then it feels like, no time it's very weird. I agree.
So the thing I want to basically start with here with the Prince Andrew sort of responding vaguely to his the accusations, but we'll get to what he said. So first of all, do you want to lay out just for us who Virginia Giuffre is and sort of a little bit about her story so we can sort of start there?
Sure. So Virginia Giuffre is really the most outspoken victim that has stepped forward during the allegations of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. She was at the close to ending being 15 years old when she was procured by Ghislaine Maxwell while she was working at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach. Her birthday is in August, so the first week of August. So Ghislaine Maxwell was driving by, and this is documented in a lot of mainstream media, newspaper accounts. She was driving by and she told the driver, and it's also, by the way, in court documents, depositions of the driver, that she was driving by Mar-a-Lago. She caught a glimpse of Virginia. Virginia is very fair with, blonde hair, your all-American type girl. And she told the driver to stop. She goes in and she finds Virginia, who is working there sort of as a spa attendant in the sort of like, in the locker type area, we can call it. And she was reading a book on massage therapy. And so Ghislaine Maxwell uses that as an in. She introduces herself to Virginia and starts a conversation. And before you know it, she is saying, hey, I know someone, you can come work for us. We can teach you how to become a full-time massage therapist. We're going to travel and you can go all around the world. And Virginia thought this is a legit thing. And Ghislaine Maxwell walks in and she speaks very proper upper class British accent. She's dressed very well. There's no reason why a 15-year-old girl would think that this woman is in fact a procurer, right, for a trafficking organization. And she says to her, well, why don't you stop by? And she gives her the address and she takes her information. Stop by at 5:00 after work. And remember that the Mar-a-Lago that belongs to Donald Trump is 6 minutes away from Jeffrey Epstein's mansion that has now been, decimated. It no longer exists. And it's always curious to me when they get rid of a scene of a crime. It's sort of like they shouldn't do that for a while. But in any event, he lived 6 minutes away. And so come 5:00, Virginia's father drives her to Jeffrey Epstein's home. They knock on the door. Who answers? Ghislaine Maxwell. She steps out. She reassures Virginia's father that everything is going to be fine. She takes Virginia up into the massage room. And that is where Ghislaine begins to teach her how to start rub the feet, rub the legs. Ghislaine allegedly removes her blouse. And that is where the first sexual assault happens.
Yeah, that's difficult to hear.
It's difficult to say and to think about. Yeah.
It's long been. It's such a. I guess this is probably part of the problem. It's just like it's so unbelievable that people can end up in this situation. Like it seems like Yeah, the nightmares that your parents would tell you about, but like come true. But thankfully, it's
Yeah,
yeah.
and so at that by that time, so Virginia had a difficult situation with her parents. Her parents had pretty much put her into like a girls' home because they were having issues. She had been molested allegedly by a family member, and when she was very young, which can really mess you up, right? And so she went and living into this all girls home, which again is full of abuse and nobody is treated well. And so she runs away, probably age around 13ish, 14ish, something like that. And she runs away from this place. She has, she's just a kid, right? She's a teenager. She has no food, nothing. She's sitting down somewhere, and a car drives by, and there is another trafficker by the name of Ron Eppinger. And he's sitting in, I think it's maybe, if I recall correctly, it was probably a limousine, but it was a car where he was being driven, and there were like these other girls in there, heavily made up, a little bit older than Virginia. And so he looks at her and says, well, gets her story, and then invites her into the car, and Virginia sees the other girls. So she sees girls. She's like, okay, it must be safe. And she's hungry. And so before you know it, he too has now raped her later that evening. And she is held in that spot, kind of like being, I'm going to use the word, pimped out to whoever he wanted to make money. He was running a minor trafficking ring. Primarily, he was using women and girls, minor girls too, from other countries, which, as you know, later on, that was something that Epstein did as well with the help of Jean-Luc Brunel. So she's there for about 6 months until Eppinger gets sort of busted. And then, so when this happens, fast forward, she thinks her life is getting straightened out. Her father has gotten her a job because he's working for Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, her dad. He gets her a job. And Virginia's like, okay, maybe my life now will get back to normal. And then before you know it, she's with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, who, I think that it's important for young girls and for women to know that if someone is asking you a lot of questions, which is what they did before they sort of made the advances toward her sexually, right? So it made a lot of inquiries about her life. And so Virginia felt comfortable. And she told him about her experience with Eppinger. And at that moment in time, they knew that they had a vulnerable victim, right? So somebody whose spirit had been broken. And if your spirit has been broken before, it's very easy for another sexual predator to sort of like immediately jump in there. And that's what happened.
Do you think that do you think that's the kind of person they were on the lookout for? Or do you think that it was just sort of, it just happened to be that way, and they saw who she was and that they could take advantage of her?
Well, it with the Palm Beach victims, it has been said that Epstein approached, let's say, girls who came from broken homes, girls who were living in, let's say, a trailer park situation, and that he targeted young girls who had financial issues. Now, whether they had financial issues or not, what made it work for him was that once he got a girl's trust, he would turn that girl into a procurer. So there was a local high school, and he would tell the girl, okay, why don't you bring me your friends? And so if you're in, let's say, in the 7th or the 8th grade, which is what these girls were in, and you have a friend who says, hey, you can make a quick $200 or $300. You only have to massage. Nobody really told the other girl, it's my understanding, what really was going to happen. You can just have to massage this old guy. He'll give you $300. And a few of them would be like, sure. They didn't understand. I mean, at that age, nobody really understands what that means. And then, they're lured into this thing. And because you're taken by surprise, you're stuck in a home where you don't know the way out, right? You're in that massage room with Jeffrey Epstein, whoever has brought you into that home, be it a girl, be it, let's say later, Sarah Kensington, I think that's her name now. They would leave you in that room with Epstein alone. How they don't know their way out. They don't know if he's going to kill them. It's like you're stuck, and in that moment, you sort of just do what you're told, and you want that moment to end. And that's what I understand happened to a lot of these girls.
That's such a tragic way of putting it. Like, and I guess that's one of the things that people maybe don't understand, because the thought is always, it's like, why did they go through with it, basically? And I guess that puts you in their shoes, that this is a horrible experience, and you just sort of like scared and trying to do everything possible to make it stop, basically.
Right. But I want to be very clear that is mainstream media's interpretation of the Jeffrey Epstein monster, I'm going to call it. But it's a far bigger monster, because he didn't just, let's say, target minors who were financially insecure or insecure because their parents were divorced. He also targeted, as did Ghislaine Maxwell, let's say somebody like Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton is one of the wealthiest women in the world. And one night, Ghislaine Maxwell walks into a club, and she sees Paris Hilton, and she tells her companion, "Oh, who is she? I want her for Epstein." And so my point is that it was not only the, let's say, poor that they targeted poor and rich alike. And in this situation, people believe that Jeffrey Epstein was a lone pedophile. No, he's interconnected with intelligence agencies and with other trafficking rings that happened before his, for example, like the Franklin scandal, right? And connected maybe to the Jimmy Savile in the UK. These are all interconnected rings. So that's what we're not really getting from mainstream, which I think, we have to put it out there for people to do their own investigation, do your own research, because you're only going to really get to the truth if you do your own research.
Yeah. I mean, that's often the case. It's a vilified phrase these days, do your own research. But the mainstream press aren't going to tell you what's going on, because, well, there's probably too many of them compromised, especially if it goes all the way up to intelligence agencies, since we know, the CIA has major plans in every mainstream news network, and especially. Yeah,
I mean, if you remember during the Church Committee hearings of 1975, one of the people that was sort of gave testimony was the then head of CBS. I believe his name was Sig, and I may be pronouncing or mispronouncing his last name, Mickelson. And he had been the head of the CBS television network in the United States for a very long time, way back into the 1950s. And his testimony was, when I joined CBS, we already had in place that we work collaboratively with the Central Intelligence Agency to provide misinformation, propaganda, if you will, to the masses. And this is his testimony from 1975. We're now today, 2021. That was called Operation Mockingbird, and I urge everyone to just do your research on this. Don't use Google, use other search engines and find out about Operation Mockingbird. It never ended. That's, we see that today when your mother can't find, for example, what's going on in the Ghislaine Maxwell case.
Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, my mum was just she's just paying attention to what's there on the news. I mean, she's fairly switched on, but just it's interesting as to what she will see and what she won't. I find, like I said, an interesting barometer. So, I wanted to get back a little bit here to, Virginia Giuffre. I think you said that I was pronouncing it incorrectly. So it was the summer of 2000, basically, that she first ran into Ghislaine Maxwell, and then she sort of got, I don't know exactly what word she would use, coerced into their service.
Yeah, and trapped, you become entrapped because what happens is psychologically, I know that when it happened to me, psychologically, you're like, oh my God, what happened? Like, I am no longer me, right? And you feel this immense shame, almost like everyone who looks at you can see the shame, and you sort of shrivel up and you become like literally a shell. You're just really a walking shell for a very long time, so that you no longer have, in my experience, so that's why I think that I can speak for possibly what Virginia felt. You feel that you no longer are like normal people. You don't belong in that normal world anymore. And so you just sort of like, literally, you're shell shocked, and you have no one to tell. Who are you going to call? And specifically in this situation, you have the local police that became involved, if you remember. And then you have the federal level that was compromised, and you have the presidents of the United States that were also connected to this. And we have a prince. And actually, there were two princes that Virginia has discussed, but Prince Andrew is the only one that she remembered, because there was a second prince whose name she does not recall. But if you look at the testimony, and her testimony has been consistent, there was a second prince that they introduced her to basically do the same thing, please them in that intimate way that she had been taught to please Epstein and Maxwell.
Yeah, it's so then to sort of move forwards in what happened to Virginia. So she then she was with them for about
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
How did she end up escaping, basically? And maybe we should go. Yeah, let's go with the escape, and then we'll go back to Prince Andrew.
Yeah, I think that's a good place. So what happened was, they approached her, Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein approached her and said, hey, because she was already, I think she had already become 18 or was about to turn 18. So at that point, she was becoming almost too old for their use, right? They really needed to use minors, because that is how you really entrap all of these people they were blackmailing. And they approached her and they said, we want you to have a baby for Epstein. You will carry Epstein's baby. We will pay you, I believe the amount was $200,000 per year. However, you have to sign the baby over to us. You will take care of the baby for us, but we are going to be allowed to do anything we want with the child. So she was completely mortified that she would bear a child and have what happened to her happen to any child that she bore, right? So she said to them, because they had been carried on a stick for 2 years, we're going to teach you, or we're going to send you to school so you can become a licensed massage therapist. So she's a quick thinking Virginia. I have to tell you, that was just a stroke of luck on her part. She turns around and she says to them to buy time, because, you don't really know. You kind of do it on the run, day by day. You kind of figure out what to do. So she looks at them and she says, why don't you guys first let me get my diploma, or my whatever, I forget what word she may have used, but the equivalent of a diploma in really becoming a licensed massage therapist. And they were ecstatic. And so within a couple of weeks, they turned around and they said to her, we have tickets for you to go to Thailand, and you're going to be taking this course. And by the way, there's a girl there, and they gave her the information, and we want you to bring her back. So they had already lined up a new victim they were going to have Virginia bring back after she completed her studies. Once she went to Thailand and she started to go to school, she met the man that would come to her rescue, a young man who she told him everything that happened to her. And he looked at her and he says, well, you can marry me. And she's already 18. And it was a whirlwind romance. They fell in love. They have been together ever since. They got married in Thailand. He took her to his home in Australia. She called Epstein and she told him, I'm married. And he was very upset. And he says, good luck to you. And he hung up on her. And then she never heard back from him until he was under investigation. And he called her, I believe, in 2000. It could have been 2007 or 2008. And she was very surprised because he didn't have her number. How would he know where to find her? Her phone suddenly rings and it's Jeffrey Epstein. And basically he's saying to her, are you getting phone calls? If anybody calls and wants to know information about me, just, he gave her instructions, and she's thinking, I don't know what's going on. And before you know it, she has communicated now with the FBI, with the Palm Beach Police Department, and she has joined and is giving information. And what motivated her was she had by this time become a mother, and she gave birth to a beautiful little girl. And she thought to herself, if I don't jump in there and help them catch Epstein and stop him, this might happen to my little girl. I have to do this for her. And she has been the crusading factor, don't you think? I mean, the one who she's named names. She's done this at great risk to herself. I mean, who goes up against the prince, the son of the Queen of the United Kingdom? Who does that? One woman, Virginia Giuffre.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to do what she did, and
yeah,
I think I'd agree there. She's definitely been like a major catalyst in. She was definitely part of I'd say the reason for the success of I say success in bringing him to court, at least in 2008.
Yes.
And
yes.
And then obviously in his later conviction before he committed suicide.
Yeah, it's always interesting. We all put it in air quotes, suicide, before he committed suicide.
Yeah. Well, what's the quote? It's like a Russian KGB agent said, it's really easy to murder someone. It takes a real professional to make someone kill themselves.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had never heard that, but I'm going to remember it. But it's so true.
Definitely. So talking of powerful people that she has gone up against, we're now in the throes of the Prince Andrew case. So she has made accusations of Prince Andrew. And so, do you want to lay out for us like how that case is unfolded? Like why now? And what she has alleged and how she's been able to like serve him with papers basically in the state of New York.
So her attorney, David Boies, who interestingly enough, was also connected with Harvey Weinstein. But in that case, he was helping Harvey Weinstein with Virginia Giuffre. He is helping her. He attempted to settle the case and contacted Prince Andrew for 5 years, as you and I discussed during our last podcast in August. And Prince Andrew pretty much ignored David Boy's letters, and just like he ignored the FBI wanting him to come and talk. And even when he was on the BBC interview, if you recall, he said, "Oh, I'm happy to help." But he's a lot of talk and no action, because he never really cooperated with anyone with any investigation. And pretty much he did the same thing with David Boyes. So the statute of limitations under the Child Victims Crime Act, which is how Virginia was able to bring a civil action against Prince Andrew, was coming to a close a few months ago. So it was either sue him on a civil level or forget about it forever. So wanting to hold these very powerful men responsible, it was not her first choice, because look, she had already sued Ghislaine Maxwell in 2015. She had sued Jeffrey Epstein in I believe it began in 2008, and then it was settled in 2009. I mean, she has had a lot on her plate, and she is a mother and she's a wife. And it's a lot, again, to take on these very powerful people. So she decided, I'm going to do it. They did, as you know. Prince Andrew tried everything. Oh, he wasn't served. Oh, they had to do it again. He ended up hiring this attorney by the name of Andrew. I have his name here, Andrew Brettler, who, oddly enough, also represents Armie Hammer. And Armie Hammer was accused of cannibalism. So an interesting choice for an attorney. Finally, the attorney wrote a letter to the court, and they said, well, I'm representing, he's based in Los Angeles. I'm representing Prince Andrew. We weren't served. So the court allowed David Boyes to serve him again. And this time, pictures of everything being served were taken, and social media shared them, as did mainstream media. What's an interesting point that I don't want to leave out is that Andrew Brettler was one of the people that David Boyes emailed with the initial documents for, to let him know that Prince Andrew was being sued. So it was, again, a delay tactic. So ultimately they responded, and they requested a 3-week extension to respond. And the court granted them the 3-week extension. And as you know, they just responded about, a week ago, something like that. And
5 days.
Oh boy,
4 or 5 days.
Yes. And this guy Brettler, pretty much, and Prince Andrew have received nothing but a big blowback. To me, it's similar to Prince Andrew on BBC, because in these documents that they submitted to the court, they included a 2015 article that calls Virginia, let me just find the term because I want to use the exact term, that a money-hungry sex kitten.
Yeah.
Come on. Oh. And that she's only doing this for money, and so on and so forth. And why do they need to come after Andrew? And because the whole, it's just, so that alone has created, I mean, as you know, I set up an open letter to Judge Kaplan, who is presiding over the case, saying, hey, hold them accountable, because you can't just keep letting these men get away with things. Hold them accountable, because we believe Virginia. Now, Virginia has alleged that it didn't just happen one time. It happened 3 times. So in the UK, it happened we have a photograph of that's very well known that Virginia provided to the FBI of Prince Andrew with his arm around then 17-year-old Virginia Giuffre with Ghislaine Maxwell in the background. And you remember that photograph, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I've got it here, actually.
Yeah. And so Virginia says that it was that day that the first, let's say, time that she was told to please him in that way happened. The second time was in New York City, in Epstein's mansion on the Upper East Side, the largest mansion in all of New York, given to him by Leslie Wexner. And that's the jurisdiction under which she was able to sue him. And the third time was in the Virgin Island area, Little St. James, which was known as Orgy Island, where Virginia alleges it wasn't just her, it was her and 8 other minors, but these were from other countries, so they spoke no English. And whereupon they took, it was a group situation, if you follow my, So, but she could only, the statute of limitations allowed her to sue him with a civil lawsuit in New York City, which is what she did. So that's where we are now.
Yeah. So Prince Andrew has responded quite spectacularly, actually. Yeah. So he called her a money-hungry sex kitten, and has basically gone with attempting to defame her. He's also request the dismissal of the lawsuit based on the fact that there was already a case made against Epstein, I believe, as well. So, which seems, given that case was dismissed, it doesn't seem like grounds for dismissal of this case.
Well, let me explain that, if I may.
Yeah, please.
In 2009, Jeffrey Epstein settled the lawsuit that Virginia brought against him. One of the, let's say, in that lawsuit, a paragraph read something like, okay, you're going to accept this amount of money. We're going to settle this lawsuit. It means that if you accept this, you cannot sue me anymore. You cannot sue my attorneys. You cannot sue my friends. You cannot sue my employees. You may not sue my business associates. And so Alan Dershowitz, who is also someone that Virginia alleges was inappropriate with her at the request of Jeffrey Epstein, she sued him, if you recall, for, I think, again, it was a defamation lawsuit, because it had happened during the filming of Filthy Rich, which, again, is a very bizarre thing because James Patterson wrote the book, but James Patterson has also worked with Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton flew on the Lolita Express 27 times, and very close with Prince Andrew and very close with Jeffrey Epstein. But here we have James Patterson, writing the book, and then this film is made of. So Alan Dershowitz, while the filming of that, gave an interview and said, well, she should sue me if she feels that I did that, but I did no such thing. I kept my underwear on. I had a massage by a very old lady. It's like, okay, so Virginia turns around and she sues him. What does he do? He turns around and he's done this for other interesting people, right? So some of his clientele include the infamous O.J. Simpson, accused of murdering his ex-wife, Nicole Simpson, and her friend in a savage thing that happened in Los Angeles. Von Bulow, accused of trying to kill his wife. I mean, he's represented a lot of nefarious characters. So he presents David Boies with the situation that, hey, I'm Jeffrey Epstein's attorney. In this settlement, it says she signed away her rights to sue me, an attorney of, and guess what? David Boies let him have that out. Then Alan Dershowitz contacts Prince Andrew, and he tells Prince Andrew, hey, I just got out of my lawsuit, and I believe it happened in August of this year, and you can use the same strategy. And that is exactly what they did. They used that same strategy, and that is where we are. So they're saying you can't sue because she signed away her rights to sue Prince Andrew when she signed the 2009 agreement. Now, tell me something, Josh. I mean, if you're an innocent man, do you use that out, or do you try to prove your innocence in court?
Well, I mean, you'd like to think he would do it in court. But I'm really confused as to how it's just like, I don't understand how Prince Andrew thinks he can get away with it based on this, because like, I understand now, I still, like, morally, I don't agree, but legally I can see how Alan Dershowitz could get away with this in this case, because, he's actually named in the previous lawsuit. But I don't think Prince Andrew wasn't mentioned in that original case, the civil case. Was it a civil case? I think it was a civil case.
Yes.
But Prince Andrew wasn't mentioned in that, was he?
No. What her attorney is claiming is that in Virginia Giuffre's statement during the time that she was suing Epstein before they settled the lawsuit, that she mentioned that she had been abused privately, in that way, by Jeffrey Epstein's friends, which included royalty. So the attorney claims that would imply that the agreement would include Prince Andrew, although it doesn't name him. That said, David Boies, and I think that the person who's really representing Virginia in court is his associate, a Sigrid Macaulay. I don't have her name in front of me, but I know her first name is Sigrid. Their position is Prince Andrew was not named, like, as you said, specifically, he was not named. But then we have to look back at when Jeffrey Epstein received that very notorious and now infamous non-prosecution agreement, which had the following words, and I don't think I have them exactly, but more or less it was that other people that were connected as co-conspirators, named or unnamed, would not be persecuted, right? That this was a complete waiver of persons named or unnamed. So this is sort of a throwback to that, right? So that you have Prince Andrew, who was not specifically named, but who was seeking an out, pretty much because there's like a reference that if you knew Jeffrey Epstein, you can't really be sued.
Right. Okay, so I'm looking at this thing right now on the New York Post. Hang on, let me pull it up just for you.
Yep.
Can you see that?
I can see it.
Oh,
yep.
Lovely. Okay, I haven't turned that bit off yet. That's good. So essentially, I'm looking at this, and it's saying that this was also okayed by top DOJ officials, which is very, very interesting. But so essentially, they're saying that I was trying to find that phrase that you had mentioned there. So it's like all co-conspirators. Here it isn't. Under well-established principles of general contract law, and particularly under the law relating to non-prosecution agreements, any and all of Epstein's potential co-conspirators are third-party beneficiaries of the non-prosecution agreement. So basically, they're saying that anyone vaguely involved in that case can't be prosecuted now.
That's what happened with the non-prosecution agreement that Jeffrey Epstein got, which, frankly, every attorney, like, so I've read and heard from hundreds of attorneys everywhere, including attorneys in Florida, because Alex Acosta gave it back to the local level to handle. Every attorney has basically said, that's never happened before. This is a 1 in a million. This is a one-off. And so we don't understand how they allowed something like this to go through. Well, it's easy to understand if we look at it in the context that he was an intelligence asset, as Alexander Acosta so famously said. I was told to back off, that Epstein belonged to intelligence. And so if you look at it from that way, they're going to back off because we have, maybe another country involved, maybe our CIA with Mossad, who knows, maybe MI5, MI6 are involved, who knows, but this is clearly an intelligence operation, and no one believed that Epstein would surface again and be rearrested in 2019. They believed, okay, slap on the wrist, case is going to go away. And this was way before the Me Too movement. So if you recall, any story that one read at the time trashed the victims. That was the mentality of just make the victims all be thought of as liars. Now, these were children, liars, prostitutes, right? Drug addicts. These were children who were the victims, and they turned it around and made the victims the offenders, which is shocking. But after the Me Too movement, and more so today, after the Jeffrey Epstein case came to light, the public, because there's so many women who have been sexually abused by someone in a position of power, or maybe, when they were children, or even men when they were children. And we have the Catholic Church as the good example, right? People are stepping forward by the droves. I mean, like you see social media. So the tide has turned where for Prince Andrew to now try to victim shame Virginia has now had serious ramifications on, he will never recover reputationally. No matter what happens, he will never recover from this.
Yeah, I mean, his reputation has definitely been trashed, well and truly.
Forever.
Yeah, well, I mean,
yeah.
For good reason. I don't say that like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just when I was sort of going through the things about this case before we spoke. Something that really sprung up to me was the juxtaposition between how the media and the courts, or like the legal system, basically are treating like two people who are in Britain and being extradited to the United States for crimes that are considered to be quite egregious, is Julian Assange and Prince Andrew. So Assange has been just tortured and falsely imprisoned. He was dragged out of the embassy, and I've seen many people describe it as a very illegal move for the police to go in and do that. And he's still not free. Like, they've cleared him and he's still in prison. And yet Prince Andrew just seems to be kind of able to continue to get away with this with impunity. And I hope that what we see here is justice served to both of them, like Assange being released.
I think that the important, there are a couple of factors that one has to take into consideration. The Prince Andrew situation is on civil level. One woman filing a lawsuit against a man, prince or not. With Julian Assange, he's taken on literally the I want to call them something, but I'm going to refrain. He's taken on the government, let's say, of the United States of America. And so that's considered, he is considered to be a traitor. And, I don't want to voice my opinion on it. So it's a different situation. It's not like the United States, as they're doing with, let's say, Ghislaine Maxwell, but only for 4 victims and only for a very limited amount of time. They have brought a case against Ghislaine Maxwell. Whether or not that's a real case is yet to be seen. But there is no federal case against Prince Andrew. So we can't really compare the two.
Well, yeah, I guess that's a very fair point. I don't like the fact that there can be accusations made of one man and he's in prison, because the reason he was put in Belmarsh was because of I don't want to say unfounded, but the there was like sexual assault allegations that have now been withdrawn, basically, and he's still in prison.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I do a lot of reading whistleblowers, and for me personally, they're the best source of information, because a whistleblower is pretty much telling you what happens in the background, right? What happens in the dark corners that you're not really getting, let's say, from mainstream, and that your government may not be telling you. That's really what's really going on. For my research regarding, let's say, the Epstein network, I've done a lot of research into former CIA officials who became in whistleblowers. And one thing that they all say, and one thing that I've noticed, is that then they are, there's a crime that they are supposed to have committed. And like in one case, somebody was put away because he was said to have been caught with a lot of drugs. In another case, this guy was said to have been committed another sexual crime. So that these whistleblowers are usually set up, and they are charged with crimes that usually, in my opinion, I do not believe they committed. And it's done because that's what powerful governments can do. You're one person, and the whole world doesn't really know that that's how it works. And that's why they get away with it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess most people don't want the idea that what happens in say like TV shows like House of Cards or something like that. They don't want to think that that's too close to reality. Whereas where I've seen several senators say, yeah, that's probably a little too close to reality for our liking, about the show. But so you mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell there. So I just wanted to get like sort of go over roughly her case and where it's at the minute. So she the court case, I think, begins next week. I think, is that right?
The court case begins on November the 29th.
Okay.
The jury selection becomes finalized on the 15th of November. So today is November the 2nd. Yesterday, she appeared in court. Oh my God, it was so dramatic, Josh. So, they have been trying to claim that she is being mistreated in jail. And frankly, she's got the whole second floor to herself. She has television. She has a private bathroom. She has 2 computers. She was given the COVID shot before anybody else in New York, practically. She, has even they changed the air conditioner filter because they complained that when she was meeting her attorneys in the room that they couldn't breathe properly. I mean, so that what I see is that the Bureau of Prisons has pretty much bent over backwards to please her because they changed the filters. Well, yesterday she shows up in court. They do have her in shackles, which is how you transport every prisoner. So, but she claimed that she had to. So if you look at today's mainstream media, there will be press reports of Ghislaine Maxwell having to crawl on her hands and knees to get into the van to go to court, that she is just being treated terribly. Her brother, Ian Maxwell, has set up a Twitter account and a website, and any mainstream media gives Ian Maxwell, and I find this so offensive, airtime, whether it be television or just print or online. Ian Maxwell is given all the time that he wants to tell the whole world how his sister is being mistreated in jail. Whereas if you and I wanted to talk to mainstream and say no, because in fact, these are her real conditions, right? I mean, and I could list all these things that are not available to a normal prisoner. The public is hearing Ian Maxwell and these proceedings that happen in court where Ghislaine becomes the actress that she is, right? Because that's ultimately what a spy is. You put on a disguise, you're someone else. She learned to do that. I wrote Ghislaine Maxwell an unauthorized biography, and I show how her father, Robert Maxwell, who was known as Israel's super spy, taught her the tricks of the trade, also taught all of the offspring, so that she goes in there and, her attorney, Bobby Sternheim, complains, oh, she had to walk on her hands and knees. So they're setting the precedent, right? To ultimately, if something doesn't go according to maybe the way they envision, because you're still in a judicial system that is controlled by the same system that, in my opinion, hired Ghislaine Maxwell to do that job with Jeffrey Epstein. But they're laying the groundwork and the foundation for pulling another card, for Ghislaine to maybe get out. That said, it was interesting to hear in yesterday's hearing. It's a pre-trial hearing, because they have filed motion after motion. The court has never offered Ghislaine. The prosecution has never offered Ghislaine typically you get some kind of agreement, right? Nor has she requested one, which is really fascinating, because every case, whether it be brought against the federal government or whether it's a civil case, there's usually the very first thing is they try to settle it. So over 90% of every case is settled after, before the court date. But in this case, no settlement has been offered, and she has not requested any settlement, because she keeps saying that she is that she's innocent, which is, to me, it's just shocking.
Yeah, I got this headline up here. It's from the Daily Beast, and yeah, so the feds refused to offer a plea deal, and then it says the British heiress appeared in court ahead of her sex trafficking trial and declared, "I have not committed any crime," which, that's ballsy, shall we say?
So let me tell you about the Daily Beast. The Daily Beast is owned by ICM, which is owned by Barry Diller. And Barry Diller sat on Ghislaine Maxwell's Terramar project board. They're very close. And so you have to if you look at almost all of the media, even if they're saying something like that, which covers really what happened, you have to wonder. And also Chelsea Clinton sits on the board of this company. And so you have to wonder sometimes who you read. So I made a firm decision on my Twitter account. I don't let anyone post anything by the Daily Beast because of the Barry Diller connection. And there's also Diane von Furstenberg's son is in Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book, and von Furstenberg is married to Barry Diller, who is now openly gay, right? So basically she was just a front, right? The beard, if you will. But her son from her previous marriage, who, by the way, is also a prince, Prince von Furstenberg. And I wonder in my mind if perhaps he is the prince that Virginia cannot remember. He is in Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book. So that this newspaper, I just don't allow anyone on my Twitter to cite it or bring it up anymore.
No, that's fair enough. I refuse to visit.
Yeah, because it's like, it's almost like, who doesn't have a connection to Ghislaine Maxwell, whose father was a publisher who had connections with all, all mainstream, right? So, but if you sit on the Terramar board, which is a complete front, you know what the deal is, right? And he has been photographed with young boys now that he's out of the closet, Barry Diller. And so it's like, well, who supplied these young boys to you? Because we know that, at least I know from my research, that Epstein provided boys to certain men, teenagers.
Brian?
Yeah, not just girls, boys as well. So it's like, so I think to myself, so I pulled up some pictures of Diller. and you probably can too right now with young boys. And it's like, okay, well, who gave you those young, so for me, it's like, I'm sorry, if it smells like it's been trafficking, I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, I'm just looking up this Barry Diller stuff. It's, yeah, I don't know.
I'll tell you,
I need to,
the rabbit holes are endless here.
yeah. Yeah, I'd need to go further into this before I'd say how weird it is, but it doesn't, it's a bit weird looking. I'm never quite sure.
Oh, so the other thing that Ghislaine wanted, she wanted one of the motions to the court that was denied, which is a good thing for us, is she wanted the victims and the minors not to be referred as victims and minors. She wanted those words stricken to, like, don't use them during the trial. They cannot be used. Judge Nathan turned around and denied that, which is, I mean, look, we're getting some at least some feeling that there's hope, because it was denied. She had a couple of other things that were denied. What's of interest, and I've spoken to a couple of attorneys, because, I have an Epstein Project newsletter and I send people information that is not necessarily in mainstream media. So her trial is scheduled to begin November 29th. It's scheduled to end approximately in January 6th. So like, the first week in January at the end of the week, which means there's a Christmas recess, right? So during the Christmas recess, they send the jury home. The attorneys are telling me, if they had been in Judge Nathan's position, they would have definitely started the trial after Christmas, right? So after the New Year, because during this recess, when the jury goes home, the news is going to be blasted with information about the trial, right? And then the jury pool will be considered tainted. So that is grounds for a mistrial. And it's interesting, are we being set up for a mistrial? I mean, that's sort of like the question that I'm asking, having spoken to a couple of attorneys.
That would be a very smart way for them to get off.
Think about it. I mean, if you go home and it's Christmas, don't you think that your family is there? Television is on, right? Something is on. Don't you think someone, and they know you're a juror, and in this the most publicized trial of I would think the century, but at least of the decade, that they're going to hear something, and then they go back to court, and something will happen, and not one attorney has said otherwise to me. So don't you find it odd that could happen?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's not the first time that there's been, in the last couple of years, problems with juries and sensitive cases. It feels like perhaps it's being set up to fail. I mean, I wouldn't want to make that accusation, but like, that's a little bit what it looks like.
I know, a little bit it looks like that to me on a lot of different levels. It's almost like, if this card doesn't work, we have this one. I mean, they're setting, because think about it. If Ghislaine Maxwell, who has now been in jail since July 2nd of 2020, that's a very long time already. So it's already the 2nd. So how many months is that? So that's a year and
almost 18 months. Yeah.
Yeah. And she claims that she's innocent, and there's no plea deal offered, and there's no plea deal requested. And she says she's being treated horribly. If I were in her position, I would want to get out of jail if I'm innocent the fastest possible way. I mean, yes, she requested bail 5 times. She was denied 5 times. Well, then most people historically strike a plea deal, and or they want this trial to happen sooner rather than later. So this was initially scheduled, if you recall, to commence in July. They didn't want to commence in July for one reason or the other. They said they were not ready. It got rescheduled to now. But there are all these doesn't she want to get out of jail? I mean, if she's innocent, I think she's not, by the way, but if she feels that she could prove her innocence, I would think, but it looks to me like they're just creating pathways for a way out. And Ghislaine Maxwell, for her to go along with this strikes me as very unusual and odd for her.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see what happens. Ultimately, it's, I'll be watching with bated breath.
Yeah, I think the whole world will.
But anyway,
one last thought before we wrap up, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
I still suspect that, something will happen. There's a lot of sensitive information connected to this trial. There's only 4 victims that they're talking about, and only for a small amount of time. What's interesting and of note is that the judge has also denied that they bring up Jeffrey Epstein's non-prosecution agreement. So one of Ghislaine's tactics was going to be the same thing. They were going to claim, which they have been claiming from the time that they first appeared in court in July of 2020, is that she is exempt from this lawsuit because she is protected under Jeffrey Epstein's non-prosecution agreement. So they basically told her yesterday, and her attorney, well, you can't bring that up during trial. So I still believe somehow that this might be a closed door trial, or that we're not really going to get real information. There's something, there are a lot of odd things happening that just don't feel like a normal case. And I just wanted to add that before, because I know this, we can talk forever, it seems like.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to add that before we kind of finalize this.
Yeah, not a problem. I was just looking at that. What you said there about the judge having denied a number of things. And they've also said, that everyone can stay anonymous, which is always nice.
Yeah.
That the accusers. So that's good news as well. So hopefully we see some justice. That would be the dream in both of these cases, both Ghislaine Maxwell and Prince Andrew. So fingers crossed.
Yes, fingers crossed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me again, Josh. It's always great to chat with you.
Yeah, not a problem. Was again enlightening and very interesting. Whilst quite dark. It's difficult things to talk about.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is dark and it's difficult. But look, you're doing a great service by bringing this to the attention of the public, and there's more than a handful of us on the front line now. So there is an alternative to mainstream media, and that's people like us. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Yeah, no problem. It's I guess we would do what we can. Just like the reason that it's such an important case is because of the powerful people that they knew and that were seemingly aware of what was going on, and that it's a big step for someone from that position of power to face some sort of consequence. So that's why I want to cover it, basically, because I think it shouldn't be ignored given the scale of the accusations being made. So but Kirby, it's been great once again, and so thanks for your time.
Oh, well, it was a pleasure. Happy holidays if we don't get to talk for another 3 months, but let's try to stay in touch during the trial and catch up so that, we can bring the news, the real news, and not just what mainstream wants to tell you. Yeah,
I'd love if you, at some point, if you wanted to do like a piece for my website, just to a written piece. Would be cool.
Sure, I'd be happy. I didn't even know you had a website where you could have written pieces.
Yeah. So I take like submissions.
From fill me in on that after the show.
Yeah, I will. Everyone, also, I'll put links for all the stuff we've discussed and for all of Kirby's books and their Twitter profile in the description below. So check that out. Everyone, thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate you tuning in and making it all the way to the end of the show. please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.